Our responsive reading today was out of Romans chapter 6. And I remember the first time that I read Romans 6. I was sitting on my father-in-law's front porch. And as I read through, I won't say it's the first time I read it. I remember the first time I read it that it kind of hit me. And I'm sitting there reading that, and I'm going, bummer. I mean, really. Because it took away every excuse I had for sinning. I mean, it's like, I'm reading Romans 6, and under the inspiration of the Spirit of God, Paul's telling us that because of the death and the resurrection of Jesus, I don't have to continue in sin. It's like, well, if I don't have to sin, then why do I sin? It's like, well, I guess that's on me. Because maybe I don't realize, I remember thinking, that I have been freed from one life and I have been born anew into a new one. That's the wonder of the gospel. You know, it's so easy for believers after a period of time to grow callous to the new life of Christ. It's so easy for us to take it for granted, to accept it, to, acknowledge it, and then to just kind of move on. To fail to appreciate the fact that because of the death of Jesus for my sins, and that God has raised Him from the dead to a new life, I too can have a new life. I can be a new creature. That's the wonder of the gospel. There's nothing else in all of the world that can promise that. You realize that? I mean, I'm not trying to sound like I'm saying Christianity is better than any other system of belief. But I'll tell you, Christ offers new life. Not just new behavior, but as Paul told the church there in Rome, he says, we died with Christ, we shall also live with Christ. Knowing that Christ was raised from the dead, is never to die again, death no longer has mastery over him. It's a new type of life. It's a life that you live that death doesn't dominate. It's a type of life that you live that sin isn't triumphant. It's a new quality of life. And no other belief system in the world can offer that. I mean, at best, they can offer you a means of being socially kind to other people. At best, they can offer you as a way to live in which your conscience feels better. But there is nothing out there other than Jesus that offers you the possibility to be transformed at the core of your person. The word that the Greeks used to use for transformed is the word that we get metamorphosis from. You want to know what that Greek word is? Metamorphosis. Because like some other words, we had no way to express that. So we brought their word into English. The idea that somebody can become one nature of creature and be changed into another. To go from being a caterpillar to being a butterfly. And that doesn't happen because somehow our doctrine is better than their doctrine, or our services are better than their services, or our people are better than their people. It doesn't happen because of that. It happens solely and exclusively because of the person of Jesus Christ. So our practice every month is that we come before the table of the Lord to remember the wonder of the gospel. That a person can enter into a new life, become a new person because of the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. But this meal is an interesting thing for us. For you see, like so many other things that have to do with practice, we lose sight of certain elements. We try to explain it. We try to get our minds around the wonder of it. And so we take the elements and we endow them with special magical abilities, whereby whenever I eat it, just by the very practice of it, somehow I have incurred God's favor. But the Bible doesn't teach that. So there came a point in church history when people said, well, yeah, that's not right, but yet there's still something in doing it. And so they came up with the idea that though it doesn't become the body and the blood of Jesus, it's still representative of the body and blood of Jesus, and I still earn God's favor by partaking of it, but that still doesn't do it. So then along comes another group, and another group says, well, yeah, the partaking of this meal is purely symbolic. You know, there's no grace attached to it. It's just a meal of remembrance. And no, that's not quite it either. There is something special about this meal. And it's not in the elements. And it's not in the practice. It's in its testament. It's in the fact that you and I, as physical creatures, whenever we partake of these elements, hold in our hands something that we can touch, we can see, we can taste, something we can experience on the level of our humanity, that reminds us of something that we cannot understand on the level of our humanity. It reminds us when we hold a piece of bread that the forgiveness of sin required a price. It required the death of Jesus. If it hadn't been the death of Jesus, it would have had to have been your death or mine. But Jesus, expressing God's desire that no one should perish, said, I will offer myself for them. Because there's no way to forgive sin without the payment of life. Period. But at the same time, being God incarnate, His sacrifice was so supreme that it not only met the penalty for sin, but it opened a door to relationship, to where I could become a new person in connection with God. So it's a special meal. Not because of what I do, but because of what He did. And whenever I come to the elements, whenever I come to this meal, Paul told the church in Rome, in Corinth, that we are proclaiming Jesus' death to the world, the supremacy of Christ. And why did he tell the church that? Why did he tell that group of believers in Corinth that? For the simple reason is this: they'd really messed it up, right? You know the story probably as well as I do. They had taken it as any other meal, and they were just denigrating it and losing all the significance. Have we done that? Have you done that? Have I done that? Have we lost sight of what it is that we commemorate? Say, well, no. I think I understand that. Good. But do you live that? Do you live the reality that you are under the penalty of sin? You've sinned. I am not a good person. I'm telling you that. I am not a good person apart from Him. In my nature, I am a troubling person in crowd with a bunch of other troubling people. I am one who is in need of transformation in crowd with a group of people that are in need of transformation. So I'm not asking if you understand that. I'm asking you if you embrace that. Do you live that? Do you recognize, have you accepted that you are somebody in need of redemption and in need of metamorphosis? That's what it means to appreciate this meal. If you do not, then these elements are not for you. And I don't mean that by way of trying to be uppity with you. I mean that out of deepest concern for you. Because if I do not appreciate the sacrifice offered, I cannot commemorate it either. If I cannot come to the Lord and say, you know what, I realize that should have been my body that was broken on the cross, and I realize that it is solely because of your blood being offered that I have the hope of a relationship with you. If I can't appreciate that, if I have not embraced that, then I cannot commemorate it. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of sticking my finger in God's eye and saying, thanks for the great sacrifice, I don't want it, but I'll go through the motions. So if you've never accepted this, if you've never come to the point of coming to a relationship with God based solely on the sacrifice of Jesus, because that's the only way there is, then I just ask you, let the elements go by. Nobody's going to think any the worse of you. Just let them go by. I don't want you to offend God. If you're a child of His, and if you've realized that, and if you've yielded to that, if you've surrendered to that, then my question to you today, Paul's question to you today, God's question to you today is, do you live that reality? Do you live in light of the fact that you have died to sin, but you live to the glory of God, the new life that He offers? Do you celebrate, not just in taking the bread and taking the grape juice, but do you celebrate in the daily life that you live that you have died to sin and you now live a new life made possible because of Jesus Christ? Is that your everyday present reality? Because that means a whole lot more than this. This will not impart grace, but I'll tell you what, living freed of sin and seeking the Father's glory, that will bring a life of grace.